who maybe aren't currently on one of our committees. So I don't have, strong feelings. I think it's just things to think about, but I do just caution us as far as how we think of this this group moving forward. So that was my comment on that. Ms. Parker?
Just on the Parent Advisory Committee piece, and what I've really seen is tremendous turnover. So it actually feels like
it's a pretty whole new group.
Almost a whole new group this year, and so I think just the idea of shifting it to the evening and seeing, if you want to come. A difference that I really want to keep with the Parent Advisory Committee, and I hope that we keep it if it moves to the night and we invite certain people, and that is that it's an open group. So yes, you may have your registered members, but it's not one of those things where only one person can come from a school, and it has to, you restrict it in that way, that it, as you were talking about there not being, I liked hearing that there weren't restrictions on, at least I wasn't sure if it was the Parent Advisory Committee or if it was it was the LCAP committee as well.
No restrictions on any of this as far as,
because
except common sense.
I think that that's been one of the best things about the Parent Advisory Committee is that, if a parent can make it once, and it's their one opportunity that year to actually sit down in a room with the superintendent, I think that's fantastic. And so I obviously we need to have core members that need to be invited and to make sure that we have the representation that we need, and I completely agree that you're going to need to move to the nighttime. And that may mean that some of the people that have been coming this first time this year won't be able to make it. We'll see. But I also feel like that it's important that we make clear to parents that this is an open committee, that just because this person is the assigned person from Monroe School doesn't mean that these 4 other parents from Monroe who are curious and interested and want to participate can also, that they can't come.
I would think the intent of the law clearly is input. So we would not look to limit anyone's opportunity to provide input at all.
Over the years, also, the Parent Advisory Committee had been elementary separated from secondary, and that was, I don't know if that's something to think about as far as concerns. We combined them 2 years ago.
Yes.
And
it really combined completely with the unification.
Right. And, and that did, I think for parents attending, there's a different discussion going on for some of it, but and maybe that might be something to think about also.
And there's still 2 separate ones.
Yes, there's one called a Parent Advisory Group, and then there's one, the DLAC.
Right, and so is there a decision on whether we would keep those 2 and add a third, or is the feeling that we're trying to do some combination of sorts?
Well, I would want to use the DLAC but I would want to run the LCAP through the DLAC for sure and get their input. We've learned that that's a thoughtful group of people. And then the Parent Advisory Committee would be another parent group that we would also run the LCAP through.
And then also a DAC committee also?
No.
Okay.
But all of the parents will have an opportunity to attend and provide input.
Okay.
I'm sure.
Well, and also, at times it's just been like a representative of each elementary or representative of each high school, junior high. So I do think there needs to be parameters to what your expectation is to this, maybe to some degree.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, and it sounds it's probably just a matter of just thinking it through and clarification, because at some point I'm actually, as I'm listening, I was like, okay, so how many groups are we actually going to have? Who's going to be on what groups? So
we'll run out of parents.
We shouldn't. With 15,000 students in our district, we shouldn't. And that actually is a challenge to us to. But I think we will run out of time. Absolutely, that's the first thing we're going to run out of. And we do have public comment on this. Sorry.
I forgot. I'm sorry.
So, Ms. Annabelle Marino, please.
Hello. My name is Annabelle Marino, as I mentioned, and I'm a community organizer for CAUSE. It stands for the Central Coast Alliance United for a Sustainable Economy. One thing that we've been discussing as CAUSE is the need, as you said, and I'm very glad you touched on the points for public input and all of this, and how you will go about the outreach. And as you noted, on the PowerPoint, the requirements are, to have 2 public hearings, and so we're very happy that you are including that public engagement piece in, on the websites, we encourage also making calls, like you said, bilingually. If you invest in making a public announcement, and more public announcements, then that's even greater. That's kind of, you stated a lot of the points that I wanted to make, so that's a positive note.
Sorry.
It's okay, it'll make my speech shorter. But it really is, like I said, to repeat, a great opportunity to really make this a success. For CAUSE, we were out walking precincts to pass Prop 30, and we have a lot of parents who were really excited about it. So the more parents we include, as President Monique Limon said, new faces, bringing new voices to the table who may not have been participating in the past meetings, but really including them in this process would be great. And as CAUSE, we've been working to do our outreach, and I've been having conversations with parent committees, so whatever we can do to help, we want to, because we want to make sure that parents are heard in this, and those that haven't been involved as often are also represented. So thank you.
Thank you. And
Thank you.
Dr. Cash, I think I just heard a possible source of getting parents on this committee.
Yeah, oh yeah,
for
we'll
recruiting.
definitely be talking to you, for sure. Count on that.
Board, any other comments
Well, we
so
got it.
far on this section?
Oh, I'm sorry.
On this section. All right.
All right, so now I gave the hardest job to Mr. Handel.
Well, of course, with the numbers. So what we decided to do to help Dr. Drotti and I guess, have a better understanding of what the LCAP committee would do, and we enlisted the support of practically the entire business department to help us with these numbers, were to gather all the categorical fundings from California that is being put into the one bucket in the LCAP, and put out the 8 different priorities of the state, and look at our current allocations of the funds. So if you were to look at our funding today and how we're using the categoricals from California, you would notice that each one of those, and currently those small buckets, fall into each one of the state priorities if we kept our current funding status quo. So how we're using the funding from 9th grade CSR, class size reduction, you'll see falls under student achievement, which is a state priority under the LCAP for the upcoming years. Is everyone following me? Okay. What we also wanted to show you was that the total cost in the red, where you see general fund contribution, in the red you see the actual cost of some of the programs. So 9th grade CS class size reduction, not only do we use the money from California, but we also have from the categoricals, but we also have general fund contribution. So you see the actual cost of 9th grade class size reduction. Additionally, you'll see down below in K through 3 class size reduction, how much money's been spent, how much we were funded through the state of California, and what the general fund contribution is, so that as you move across the board, you'll see how we spent the monies under the state priorities, but as you go down and look at each one of the cells, you'll see all the different state categorical, the current state categoricals. If you could push it a little bit more, no, the other way, please. You'll see where those particular resources fell under the LCAP, the state priority. So this is essentially a simulation of what an LCAP plan would be using our current expenditures, falling into the 8 school state priorities.
Questions, Dr. Buss?
So this is just obviously an exercise to find out where we stand if we were to take our current funding and put it future forward.
That's correct.
So, we are in no way obligated that we're going to put the funding in those future categories.
That's correct. We just wanted to simulate what it would look like if we were under this, if we were to use the template that we don't even know what's going to look like this year. This is how we allocated the funding using all the different buckets and the restrictions that we currently have and put them into the state of 8 state priorities.
Which I think is great because it's a good exercise for me, at least, to look at like, wow, parent involvement, we only have $21,957.
It's interesting because that jumped out at us as well.
Yeah. And then you look at some of the other areas, and there's a lot of logic to why we're spending the money in those particular areas. But then some of the others, like that one in particular, you kind of wonder, could we do more? So
we think it's particularly important as well that you see what the general fund contribution is into a lot of these different areas, these different resources or initiatives, because obviously we don't get funded enough through the state of California to properly fund 9th grade class size reduction or K through 3 class size reduction and various different initiatives throughout the district. So we wanted you guys to see that as well. Next up is Dr. Drotti. He's going to explain how some of the resources that we laid out in the plan, actually, what they're actually paying for.
Well, we wanted to give you a deeper picture. Now that Mr. Handel talked about how we reorganize it, but to actually give you a description of what the money was spent on. So we have listed, we created a table that listed the resources. For example, in the first one up there is 0801 class size reduction, the amount, and also what it funds. And basically, if you scroll down to the next set of slides, you'll see basically all the different resources that we have and what it paid for. And we just wanted to open up for questions if there's any questions or any clarity on some of the information.
These slides were, because oftentimes it's like, well, what is it you're spending that money on? And these are just examples. They're not the exhaustive list. You're not going to add it all up, but they're just so that you get an idea, okay, well, that's what we spent the money on for that. It was for, hiring teachers. It was for getting science equipment. It was for transportation for special needs students.
Music teachers.
Ms.
Right.
Parker?
I think I just want to spell things out really clearly, and that is one piece on the class size reduction. When you're talking about the 5 secondary teachers, that's to lower English class size, English language arts class size to 25-to-1 in 9th grade.
Correct.
But just in general, that these are, you're just looking at the categorical funding and what's our first step when suddenly the restrictions go away.
Yes.
And this doesn't look at all at what's currently being spent in the general fund. I think that like a casual TV viewer might look at this and think, oh, this is all the money that the district gets. No, this is just a lot of the categorical funding that we get from the state. But I really appreciate you doing this because I feel like it's been almost frightening to think that, all these restrictions are going to go off and what are we going to do next? I really, really appreciate this first step and this first look at it. I think that this is, we've needed to do this. And of course, it still feels like we're flying in the dark, but there's a little bit of, shadows now that I can make a few things out. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, our plan is to take the next steps. We'll come back with you with our LCAP committee, who's going to be on it. We'll give you a schedule of the meetings when we intend to hold those. We'll move backwards from our presentation to you, which one of the interesting things is that we're going to have to have the simultaneous act happening in springtime that I think is going to be really awesome, and that is you're going to get to look at, with very specific ways, how we're going to spend our money at the same time you're approving the budget. And the mechanics of the plan and then the budget will have to be done, but those things will be happening over a couple of months at the same time as you'll be learning about it. So, you know, as I shared at the Ed Foundation, there's a lot of stress going on. I wish most of it was caused by me, so then I could just eliminate it. But a lot of this really uncertainty is from, we just don't know what the state's going to ask us to do. So, but we think we have a plan.
Well, I appreciate the plan, and I look forward to continuous conversations and information about how this is going to play out.
Count on it.
All right. And our final conference agenda item is a final report by the Citizens Parcel Tax Oversight Committee for Measures I 2008. Thank you so much for being so patient and waiting on a long evening and night now.
Thank you, Cricket.
Well, thank you. And I first want to say thank you to all the voters in Santa Barbara who approved our parcel tax and allowed us to have this amazing funding for our schools in the school district. So if we could go to our next slide. The parcel tax was passed in 2008, $27 per parcel, 4 years, and it ended in July. The purpose was to supplement technology, classroom music, math, and science in K through 6 programs at our schools. The members on the Oversight Committee are overseeing the compliance with our bylaws and monitoring the funds. You'll see a list of our committee members. There's 7 of us. And if we go to the next slide, we're going to see an overview of the financial results for the last year, 2012, 2013. Started the year at $411, brought in $646,510 in tax revenues and interest. Expenditures and indirect cost of $498,877, with an ending funding balance of $39,216. I want to draw your attention to that all of that money has actually been spent or committed, so it will be used with our schools in contracts. If we overview and look at what that money is giving us, it's giving us 7 music teachers, 6 full-time employees at our school districts, elementary schools, $383,100 paid in salaries and benefits to those teachers. Math, science, and technology, $65,096 allocated to our elementary school sites, and $96,600 allocated to our charter schools so that they can independently create their own programs as offered in the other schools. If we look at the 4-year total of this parcel tax, it's given us over $2 million that our school district didn't have, which has brought programs to our schools that are very valued. Senior exemptions took out nearly $20,000 from it, and we did have interest to give us just under $2.5 million that was brought into our school district to bring programs to our schools. If we look at the expenditure over those 4 years, nearly $1.5 million went to music teacher classroom salaries, and nearly $300,000 went to each school site for math, science, computers. We bought $160,000 worth of musical equipment that our students get to use, and gave just over $500,000 to charter schools so that they could have both music and math and science technology upgrades in their schools. If we look at all of the schools in the district that are non-charter, how the math and science technology funding was allocated, it's based on attendance at each school, and each school site could create their own proposals for how they could best enhance their math, science, and technology. I just want to draw your attention to our trends in senior citizen exemptions. It's gone up and down based on economy, and I think also word of mouth about the program. And that reduces the income, but then also has a little higher expenditure in the district costs for dealing with processing those exemptions. So to wrap up, our terms were extended through the summer to allow final funder expenditures, and Several of our committee members are going to continue to serve on Measure B. Thank you, voters, for renewing our parcel tax so that these amazing programs could continue in our schools. There will be 5 of us continuing. We will have the Measure I bylaws allowed 2-year term limits. We want to thank 2 retiring members, Alice Post and Julie Sorensen. We had our vacancies that were made by their retiring filled by Roberta Winghall and Lynn Rodriguez, who will be on Measure B. And that's my report.
Thank you. Board, any questions or comments? Ms. Parker?
Just thank you so much, Ms. Wood. I mean, thank you so much for everything that you do with the district and then, you know, serving on the original Measure I committee and then rolling over to Measure B. I know that sometimes it feels like it's, you know, meetings and just taking in a lot of information, but I think it's so important to the citizens of Santa Barbara and our larger community to know that you're there and keeping an eye on it, and I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
This concludes our conference agenda. Board, are there any, we don't have to go back to any of the consent agendas, but are there any future agenda items that you would like to see put on one of our meetings? No? Not at this time? All right, so with that, I will go ahead and adjourn. Thank you.
Question, is there a good website for Common Core? Someone was asking me, like, what can I look at to get an understanding?
It's on our website.
An actual...
Links on our website.
That show it? Okay, good.
Yeah, because then links to the county, good stuff.
Okay.
I think you've got all the